They also spent all of last year running away from Project 2025, acting like Project 2025 didn't exist. But what have they been doing this year? Implementing and unleashing Project 2025. Now, all of a sudden, Donald Trump admits it was his project all along. He just did it earlier today.
Even though they were gaslighting you, Donald Trump was gaslighting them the entire time. He putting people from Project 2025, some of the authors, in key positions throughout his administration. Now they're talking about taking down the Congress, and people are starting to listen.
Trump is in on Project 2025 after disavowing it during his campaign. Now it's almost 50% complete. On October 2nd, he backed the conservative plan on Truth Social, where he shared he was meeting with Russ Vought, a co-architect of Project 2025 and the director of the Office of Management and Budget, to talk about agency cuts, a key part of the Project 2025 plan to centralize power in the executive branch. But here's the thing, Trump has already gotten nearly 50% of Project 2025 done because it was the plan all along.
This project wouldn't exist if we didn't have the Trump administration.
He's gotten rid of hundreds of thousands of civil servants and installed pro-Trump loyalists screened with questions created by the Heritage Foundation, the org behind Project 2025. He's taken expanded control of independent agencies created by Congress, part of Project 2025's embrace of the unitary executive theory, which posits that the president has centralized authority over every agency, from the DOJ to the FCC to the SEC. It could go on, but he's following Project 2025 to a T. Everyone said the left was fear-mongering when we brought up concerns during the election. Now it's proven we were 100% right. Trump is centralizing power in the president to an unprecedented level, exactly what the founders feared, and the conservative Supreme Court has yet to get in his way.
And they won't be. People are up in arms because they're saying that Project 2025 has been halfway implemented. If you remember, Project 2025 was that plan that came out from the Heritage Foundation that, of course, President Trump said he didn't have anything to do with. And when you looked at it, there were a lot of really cool common sense things that were in there, but then there were also some just far, far out there stuff. And when you look at who put it together, which is the Heritage Foundation, what you're going to see is there are people who are involved in that foundation who really hate President Trump, and but then there are some in there who love President Trump. There's some good and some bad in it, and I feel like there were some large donors who are Trump haters who put some poison in there. Oh, but overall, it had some really decent stuff in there. Kendall Whitmer, the spokesperson for the DNC, told Newsweek on Monday that Trump spent months misleading voters over Project 2025. Donald Trump and his administration are doing what they do best, to betray Americans in order to consolidate power. The thing of it is that we in no way feel betrayed because we liked a lot of what was in Project 2025. It's like, oh no, I just found out Trump is going to implement a whole bunch of stuff I agree with. I feel so lied to. How could he? Anything but that. Winning.
We're going to win so much, you may even get tired of winning. And you'll say, please, please, it's too much winning. We can't take it anymore. Mr. President, it's too much. And I'll say, no, it isn't. We have to keep winning. We have to win more. We're going to win more. We're going to win so much.
I don't know why that still makes me laugh so hard.
Last summer, we spent all our time reading this, Project 2025. 2 volumes here I've got because that's how many pages it is. It's more than 900 pages. It's a conservative roadmap for a Republican presidency to reshape the entire federal government. President Trump repeatedly distanced himself from this on the campaign trail last year, despite many of its contributors working on his election team. He's since appointed some of its authors to lead some of the same federal departments and agencies that they devoted long chapters to for the Project 2025 agenda. Russell Vought, who orchestrated the whole project, but also wrote the section on the Office of Management and Budget, now runs the Office of Management and Budget. Brendan Carr, who wrote the chapter on the Federal Communications Commission, now runs the Federal Communications Commission.
What's not to love?
8 months into Trump's second presidency, the authors of Project 2025, they gotta feel like their time was worth it because a significant amount of the policy proposals in this thing have already been implemented, with more in progress. President Trump's evisceration of the federal workforce, his focus on establishing a federal government loyal to him, ripped out of the first chapter. His dismantling of the Department of Education and of USAID resemble the plans laid out in this book. The firing of the FBI director in the middle of his 10-year term and the elimination of any sort of independence between the FBI and the White House are written into this book. Trump's war on climate research, it's taken straight from these pages.
I love it.
The April firing of nearly 400 scientists who author the National Climate Assessment, which tells us where we are as a country in the fight against climate change. Page 59. The White House has re-embraced coal as a valuable energy source while pushing solar and wind energy to the side. Page 377. Many of the administration's attacks on rights and contraception access are sourced all the way through this book. In March, the Trump administration pardoned 23 people who were violating the FACE Act, which is meant to maintain open access to clinic entrances and protect doctors and patients from harassment. The Department of Justice was also instructed to largely stop enforcing the law, signaling that will not defend access even in states where abortion is legal. Page 558. In January, Trump signed an order enforcing the so-called Mexico City policy, a Reagan-era rule that bars foreign aid going to any organization that even discusses as a healthcare option. Page 260.
Based.
July's reconciliation bill in Congress was almost like a combo deal for Project 2025's architect. It includes provisions to eliminate subsidies and tax credits for renewable energy, which can be found on page 306, to impose stricter work requirements for SNAP food assistance from page 299, to increase the capacity of ICE detention facilities by 100,000 beds from page 143, to roll back student loan forgiveness and eliminate income-backed repayment options from page 331. All of this adds up to a wildly successful first 8 months for the conservative interest groups and think tanks that joined up to write Project 2025.
It's beautiful.
The Heritage Foundation, which led the project, has wielded influence in Washington for decades, but never as much as it does right now at this moment. And by the way, we're not done. Next month, Heritage is releasing a judicial counter project to Project 2025. It's called The Heritage Guide to the Constitution, which intends to reshape policies and priorities inside the judicial branch as much as it's already done within the executive branch. What could possibly go wrong? I'm joined now by David Pepper, former chairman of the Ohio Democratic Party and author of the timely book, including 2025, Don't Let This Happen, America. He wrote a Substack series on Project 2025. Also with us, Angelo Carasone, chair and president of Media Matters for America, a nonprofit media watchdog, who also, I mean, these guys were on top of it all the time. So, David, let me start with not a detailed Project 2025 question as much as a strategy question. Donald Trump said over and over again, I got nothing to do with it. He said, I don't agree with it at various times. And every single week, Angelo was out there, you were out there, I was out there, telling you the connections between the people who wrote the chapters and Donald Trump and videos of what they said. How do you fight this? He lied about his connection to it, and yet everything that was written in these books is coming to pass.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I mean, I think with the exception of shows like yours, this was one of the biggest media screw-ups I've seen in politics in my lifetime, that just simply because he denied the connection, they turned it into a both sides thing, and that really watered down people believing. And the book you see behind me, that I wrote that in desperation for people to actually read, not just read the plan, which no one does, but actually think about what it meant. They're a vengeful DOJ. And I was trying to say to people, okay, don't read the 1,000 pages, but imagine if the things that Donald Trump was promising and the Heritage people were promising were to happen, and it's played out exactly as you were saying, as I tried to write. And I do think it's a real cautionary tale, the media allowing someone just denying it, gutting to a both sides, which you didn't do. You made the connections, you connected the dots. And I wish a lot more people had done exactly that.
Angelo, part of it is that it's one didn't need a lot of imagination to cover this, right? It's not a fun read. It's not an easy read. But they actually said the things that they're going to do. It wasn't hidden in deep abstraction. They said what they were going to do, and now they're doing it.
Yeah, and I think on the other part, in terms of even just the coverage and people believing it, is that, you know, the more people learned about it, it was wildly unpopular. No one really liked the aspects or parts of Project. I mean, it was universally unpopular. And I think that also fed into the ideas because, well, I mean, everybody puts together a wish list ahead of elections, but no, they couldn't possibly implement these things. And then I think then to take a step back, the other part that was so hard about it is that in totality, when you get beyond the individual examples that you cited, and there are so many others, but in totality, it was essentially a plan, not just to change government and policies, but reshape American society. And that just felt fantastic. People say, oh, come on, that's just a fantasy. Of course, that's what they're saying, but they're not going to actually try to reshape American society through all of these changes. And I think that made it really hard for people to fully internalize the fact that a vote for Trump and putting Trump in office was actually a vote for putting Project 2025 into effect and all the consequences that come out from there. And
so part of the problem, David, and you've written about
this
as it relates to states. Some people, the reason Angelo says it didn't seem real to some people is because people didn't associate Donald Trump with that level and depth of thinking about structural organization. But this was written by people who actually do have that. Whether you agree with them or not, these are people who had thought this through. We think of party platforms, but nobody ever takes those seriously. This was a party platform on steroids.
Right. And I also want to say, going back to the theory on states, it tells us everything that they had to, once it became unpopular, and this thing was toxic. Once it became unpopular, they had to deny that they were tied to it.
So, okay, this is interesting, Angelo, because you talked to my former colleague, Jeff Bennett, on PBS about this, and you articulated this very well, in which you said they needed a bad guy and they needed a good guy in Project 2025. The bad guy was the state, which, by the way, they articulated exactly who they mean in this book, so it's not a nebulous term. The good guy, not necessarily Donald Trump, but a unitary executive, an all-powerful executive which would fight that state.
That's right. And that is a simple story for people to understand. They tapped into the animosity that they had cultivated for so long around the idea of this abstract state. And the argument was you need something very clear to fight it. Good versus bad. It's a simple thing for people to rally around and organize with. And that is fundamentally the story of Project 2025. And that's where I think this gets, when we talk about reshaping society, here's a perfect example. There's nothing in Project 2025 that specifically says we're going to use the National Guard to invade D.C. and invade these cities to implement this policy. But when you read 2025 in total, what it basically says is that the unitary executive needs to use the military and military powers to enforce its policies across the country, and in particular in bringing states and cities to heel.
Yes.
And that's riddled throughout it. So what it does is it not only sets up this idea of good versus bad, but then it starts to weave together the types of examples and illustrations that the good guy, in this case the unitary executive, can step outside the bounds of the norms, break all those norms in order to fight these bad guys. And that is, we're living in the manifestation of Project 2025 come to life right now, beyond just the individual policy prescriptions.
David, I mean, we could all lose a lot of sleep over what was in this, the fact that we warned people and people still voted for it. What is the option? What's the other option? Should people who don't like this have their own Project 2029? What should be done about this?
Hey, you could have a Project 2029, but President J.D. Vance isn't going to be implementing it. Now he's got a winner. People are going to find clips of this video and play it back. And be like, oh, he didn't win.
I mean, I do think we need better short, medium, long-term planning on the pro-democracy side. I think that's very clearly the case. So much of what we do is simply reactive, playing defense and not offense. I've actually seen lists flying around of people starting to think this way. A friend of mine in Congress is laying out, Greg Landsman, who's my congressman, he's laying out a plan on policy. I see others laying this out. I do think we need better planning like this. One of the things, the National Guard is one manifestation, but one of the things that we're completely losing sight of is another example. You know, after John Bolton had his house raided, J.D. Vance was literally saying, we are doing this and we are doing that. Just like Donald Trump is announcing results of the investigation in Utah. Mm-hmm. That is all Project 2025. Before this, you had the FBI doing that. It was separate. It wasn't politicized. And just those examples show us what we're undermining.
He says that the FBI wasn't politically motivated.
Before this, you had the FBI doing that. It was separate. It wasn't politicized. And just those examples show us what we're undermining.
Angelo, and I'm open to any criticism here because that is your job, right? Telling us what we do and don't do right. I tried, but I think this has been a failure of media, right? Like never has anything been more obvious in history. They wrote it all down and they're doing it all. What must we in the media do differently?
I think here's what I would say, right? The best time to plant a tree is 15 years ago. The second best time is today. And so in your segment before, you explained that they're doing it again. They're laying out a new playbook for the courts. And it's not just a set of, independent experts. Justice Alito wrote the preface. 36 judges are contributors to that book. They're going to do it all over again. So what I would say is this. We don't have to self-flagellate, beat yourselves up for all the work in the past. We would instead focus on what can be done.
You can sit there and do absolutely nothing because nothing that you do is going to stop what's coming with Project 2025. No, you guys caught me. I've been buying Halloween sweaters. That's why the advertisements are popping up. I buy me a coffee link to buy Leroy a dog treat. Leroy, stop that. You're so cute. Oh, I love you. I love you. You guys steal the show. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Red Dawn Daily with your host, me, Dawn Marie, and sometimes Leroy. Leroy, you're not bored, are you? Leroy, did you know that 9 out of 10 people only watch to see you? Yeah. I'm just kind of here holding space for you. It's true. It's true. Leroy, you're so much fun. You're way more fun than any puppet. Right, Leroy?